Good evening. I was helping Lex and Brett and Brian and Charles and Gonzo and all the people who are organizing this event over the last couple months to vision this out and put it together. And I knew that one of the evenings was going to be psychedelic storytelling, and I'd been to one of the events where they'd done this before in Massachusetts in the spring in Amherst. And I was like thinking, trying to rack my brain, like I must have some story that I could bring. And I really was totally coming up short, until three days ago. I was like, it's cool, I'll help out do this event, but I don't really have, I don't have one that I feel like is worth anything. And then I found myself telling one to a friend at dinner 2 days ago, and I was like, damn, all right, this is actually, I think, an interesting story for this event and for this time and place. A lot of the stuff we'll be discussing tomorrow in the event here, that's more talks and presentations about the past, present, and potentially future research around psychedelics and psilocybin specifically. A lot of these conversations right now are really inside of or take place in front of the backdrop of the fact that these substances are by and large illegal in the world, and that the war on drugs is in its 45th year or something, and kind of still kicking, although maybe changing, but still very, very present in these conversations. So this story kind of is interesting to me in the context that it brings to that context. It's actually a story that my dad should tell because it happened to him. I've heard him tell it enough times that I feel like I'm just gonna give it a go, and there'll be stuff lost in translation and stuff that I probably made up, but that's all in the game of storytelling, I guess. So I think the date is somewhere around the 70s, somewhere in the early 70s. So maybe LSD, yeah, LSD must have just been illegal for a few years at that point. My dad was a priest an Episcopalian priest or Anglican in Philadelphia at the time, working at Penn University, and he had a woman he was very close friends with, who was his secretary at the office there, who was getting married, and had asked my father to do the marriage ceremony, a very, very normal affair for a priest to be doing. So everything's, my dad took this stuff seriously, and really always enjoyed meeting the couples he was going to marry several times before doing the actual ceremony, and getting to know them a bit, and having conversations about what they wanted the ceremony to be like, and maybe even seeing if they want to write their own vows or things like that, and really kind of making the ceremony something that's specific to them instead of just some cookie cutter boilerplate religious thing to read through. So this was going well. He met the groom to be, who was a big guy from South Philadelphia. Anyone who knows Philadelphia knows South Philadelphia is kind of one of the rough and tumble parts of town. A lot of Italians, a lot of organized crime. And this guy was named Vinny or Tony or something like this. That's something I don't remember in the story, but it's somewhat irrelevant. It's one of those names that screams mob, And my dad really trusts and knows this woman very well, so he's going through this whole process, and very, he's got his heart in it, and so do these two people. So the wedding comes, everything goes great. My dad says, it was a crazy experience. There are tons of people in suits with gold chains, and their shirts unbuttoned two buttons, a big South Philadelphia wedding. Was something totally outside of my dad's normal life and scene, but such is the life of someone doing marriages for people who ever come to you, right? And somewhere in the middle of this whole process, it turns out that Tony or Vinny, this guy, is not in fact part of the mob, although he does seem to quite associate with it, but he's in fact an undercover narc for the Philadelphia police force. I don't remember if he knew that before the wedding or not. It doesn't really matter. I would like to know, but so this is, an interesting part of the story. And the wedding goes well, and it's weeks later, nothing to report, and my dad gets a phone call from this guy, and he says, "Ralph, thank you so much. The ceremony, everything, it meant a lot to us. It went wonderfully. I want to take you out to lunch and just catch up because I enjoyed speaking to you so much, and let's do it again." My dad was like, "Great, that sounds great. Let's do that." So they go out to lunch sometime. They have a nice conversation. They get back in each other's loops, and he says, "Ralph, I want to give you a gift. This has meant so much to me. I want to give you a gift for what you've done for us." And my dad's saying, "Well, you already paid me. Like, there's no need, but thank you." And he says, "Ralph, have you ever done LSD?" And my dad's, talking to a policeman. And it's 1970 something, and my dad had never done LSD. My dad's a bit too old to be a hippie, quite. He was born in 1936, so he was kind of like more of the Beat generation, perhaps, and was around a lot of the countercultural stuff in the 60s, but he wasn't like in his early 20s or something. He was like in his mid 30s, so he was like supportive to a lot of the cause and like devoted to the anti-war cause and the civil rights cause and like involved in a lot of the stuff which we associate with the hippie generation and like the early psychedelic movement of the time, but hadn't really been right in the thick of it himself. So this is so the answer is no to the question, has he ever done LSD? And Tony, or we'll say Tony says, I'd love to give you LSD as a gift for this, and do you have a free Saturday sometime? My dad, I think it's so cool that my dad actually like took this seriously and did it, and took him seriously and said, "Yeah, like next Saturday sounds good. Let's do it." So my dad cleared his schedule. He had a wife and kids at the time at home and a job as a priest, and cleared his schedule for a day. Drives out to this guy's house. He the guy welcomes my father into a room he has in the basement, and he says, "Okay, Ralph, do you like Beethoven?" And my dad loves Beethoven. He's like a huge Beethoven fan, huge classical music fan in general. So this is an easy answer again. Like, yeah, I love Beethoven. And he says, "Great, okay, so." So he gives my dad what my dad describes as he remembers it looking like I think it was 2 pills, like pressed pills, like in like maybe like sugar pills kind of thing, which I imagine must have been, I'm totally theorizing here, but I imagine it must have been seized drugs, because this guy's a cop. He's like he's not only a cop, but he was specifically an undercover cop doing drug busts, like researching this. So I mean, these drugs go somewhere, right? When they're seized, and somehow Vinny was like, like had some, and so he gives my dad the LSD. He tells my dad to lie down on the floor. He has a carpet there, and he just starts DJing Beethoven records at my dad all day long, while my dad just lies there and blisses out on the floor for the whole session. And my dad talks about it like kind of humbly and modestly. He says like, "Oh, the music was, it got right inside my body, and the colors of the room and the colors of the strings and all of the sounds and timbres of the orchestrations just mixed behind my eyelids, and he had a wonderful experience." And I guess 10 or 8 to 12 hours later, shook Vinny's hand and got up and drove back home to his life. And he's never done psychedelics since then, but it really, really has left his mind completely open and receptive to the fact that these are interesting and like safe experiences, right? Someone who in other ways wasn't particularly caught up in the center of the psychedelic whirlwind of the 60s and 70s, as I mentioned, which I think is interesting. that's about it for the story. The reason that I think it's cool to tell in 2015 here is like this guy who is like a narc, who we demonize these people like crazy all the time inside of the psychedelics conversations. You know, the fact that the DEA is going after psychedelics producers and blah, blah, blah. Like this guy, first of all, not only did he have the presence of mind to understand that there was something like not just like illegal and bad about the drugs that he was maybe like tracking down and seizing, but he also was like seemingly a totally well-trained like psychedelic session leader or like therapist even, right? Because like seriously, like he did exactly what they do at the Johns Hopkins like studies. Like he led my dad through like more or less textbook how all the clinical trials are being led these days inside of controlled academic or medical situations. And this guy's like an undercover cop doing this with, I imagine, like stolen, seized drugs to the priest who married him because he thinks it would be a meaningful gift for him having just blessed his relationship for the rest that he's going to be following through the rest of his life. Like that's like it trips me out like in a bunch of different ways, and I think it's really humanizing and interesting to all the different sides of the stories that we're telling and thinking about and interacting with these days, to remember that all the different people who are involved in these, whether or not they've had direct experiences with the substances themselves, probably have, if they have, they probably do have some sort of personal like understanding of what's going on that's not just straight dogmatic, not just straight legalistic, not just straight, you know, and also from the other side, not just like directly kind of like anti any of those things for us on like the pro-psychedelic side, if you want to say it that way. So yeah, wherever this guy is right now, I thank him like crazy for having done this. And I imagine if he did it with my father wasn't the only one who he did this to. So yeah, there you go.